Part 2. Derry stared at him for a second, then cracked a grin. Soda Pop isn't afraid of him like everyone else, and enjoys teasing him. I'd just as soon tease a full-grown grizzly, but for some reason, Derry seems to like being teased by Soda. Our gang had chased the Socias to their car and heaved rots at them. They came running towards us now, 4 lean, hard guys. They were all as tough as nails and looked it. I had grown up with them, and they accepted me, even though I was younger, because I was Derry and Soda's kid brother, and I kept my mouth shut good. Steve Randall was 17, tall and lean, with thick, greasy hair that he kept combed in complicated swirls. He was cocky, smart, and Soda's best buddy since grade school. Steve's specialty was cars. He could lift a hubcap quicker and more quietly than anyone in the neighborhood, but he also knew cars upside down and backwards, and he could drive anything on wheels. He and Soda worked at the same gas station, Steve part-time and Soda full-time, and their station got more customers than any other in town. Whether that was because Steve was so good with cars or because Soda attracted girls like honey that draws flies, I couldn't tell you. I liked Steve only because he was Soda's best friend. He didn't like me. He thought I was a tag-along and a kid. Soda always took me with them when they went places if they weren't taking girls, and that bugged Steve. It wasn't my fault. Soda always asked me. I didn't ask him. Soda doesn't think I'm a kid. Two-Bit Matthews was the oldest of the gang and the wisecracker of the bunch. He was about 6 feet tall, stocky in build, and very proud of his long, rust-colored sideburns. He had gray eyes and a wide grin, and he couldn't stop making funny remarks to save his life. You couldn't shut up that guy. He'd always had to get his 2 bits worth in, hence his name. Even his teachers forgot his real name. It was Keith, and we hardly remembered he even had one. Life was one big joke to 2-Bit. He was famous for shoplifting and his black-handled switchblade, which he couldn't have acquired without his first talent, and he was always smarting off to the cops. Really couldn't help it. Everything he said was so irresistibly funny that he just had to let the police in on it to brighten up their dull lives. Well, that's the way he explained it to me. He liked fights, blondes, and for some unfathomable reason, school. He was still a junior at 18 and a half, and he never learned anything. He just went for kicks. I liked him real well because he kept us laughing at ourselves as well as other things. He reminded me of Will Rogers. Maybe it was the grin. If I had to pick the real character of the gang, it would be Dallas Winston. Dally. I used to like to draw his picture when he was in a dangerous mood, for then I could get his personality down in a few lines. He had an elfish face, with high cheekbones and a pointed chin, small, sharp animal teeth, and ears like a lynx. His hair was almost white, it was so blonde, and he didn't like haircuts or hair oil either, so it just fell over his forehead in wisps, and kicked out in the back in tufts, and curled behind his ears, and along the nape of his neck. His eyes were blue, blazing ice, cold with a hatred of the whole world. Dally had spent 3 years in the wild side of New York, and had been arrested at the age of 10. He was tougher than the rest of us. Tougher, colder, meaner. The shade of difference that separates a greaser from a hood wasn't present in Dally. He was as wild as the boys in the downtown outfits, like Tim Shepard's gang. In New York, Dally blew off steam and gang fights, but here organized gangs are rarities. They're just small bunches of friends who stick together, and the warfare is between the social classes. A rumble, as it's called, is usually born of a grudge fight, and the opponents just happen to bring their friends along. Oh, there are a few named gangs around, like the River Kings and the Tibber Street Tigers, but here in the Southwest, there's no gang rivalry. So Dally, even though he could get in a good fight sometimes, had no specific thing to hate. No rival gang, only Socias. And you can't win against them no matter how hard you try, because they've got all the breaks, and even whipping them isn't enough to change that fact. Maybe that's why Dallas was so bitter. He had quite a reputation. They have a file on him down at the police station. He had been arrested, he got drunk, he rode in rodeos, lied, cheated, stole, rolled drunks, jumped small kids, he did everything. I don't like him, but he was smart and you had to respect him. I want to point out the fact that he just told you, Ponyboy just told you, he doesn't like Dally. But I don't know about you, if you're going to tell somebody about someone you don't like, are you going to spend an entire page, like almost 2 pages, explaining all of the things about this person? Or do you just not like them? Back to the book. Johnny Cade was last and least. If you can picture a little dark puppy that had been kicked too many times and is lost in a crowd of strangers, you'll have Johnny. He was the youngest next to me, smaller than the rest with a slight build. He had big black eyes and a dark tanned face. His hair was jet black and heavily greased and combed to the side. But it was so long that it fell in shaggy bangs around his forehead. He had a nervous, suspicious look in his eyes. And that heat and that beating he got from the socials didn't help matters. He was the gang's pet, everyone's kid brother. His father was always beating him up, and his mother ignored him, except when she hacked off at something. And then you could hear her yelling at him clear down to our house. I think he hated that worse than getting whipped. He would have run away 1,000,000 times if we hadn't been there. If it hadn't been for that gang, Johnny would have never have known what love and affection are. I wiped my eyes hurriedly. Did you catch him? Nope. Got away this time. The dirty Two-Bit went off cheerfully, calling the socials every name he could think of. The kid's okay? I'm okay. I tried to think of something to say. I'm usually quiet around people, even the gang. I changed the subject. I didn't know you were out of the cooler yet, Dally. That means, jail. Good behavior. Got off early. Dallas lit a cigarette and handed it to Johnny. Everyone sat around to have a smoke and relax. Don't smoke, kids. A smoke always lessens the tension. Not true. I had quit trembling and my color was back. The cigarette was calming me down. Two-Bit cocked an eyebrow. Nice looking bruise you got there, kid. I touched my cheek gingerly. Really? Two-Bit nodded sagely. Yeah, nice cut, too. Made you look tough. Tough and tough are 2 different words. If you're listening to this and that made sense to you, good job. If you're not reading along, you're going to have to figure this out. Tough is the same as rough. Tough means cool, sharp, like a tough-looking Mustang or a tough record. In our neighborhood, both are compliments. Steve flicked his ashes at me. What were you doing walking by here lonesome? Leave it up to good old Steve to bring up something like that. Well, I was coming home from the movies and I didn't think. You don't ever think, Barry broke in. Not at home or anywhere where it counts. You must think it's school with all those good grades you bring home, but you always got your nose in a book. But you ever use your head for common sense? No sirree, Bob. And if you did have to go by yourself, you should have carried a blade. I just stared at the hole in the toe of my tennis shoe. Me and Darry didn't dig each other. We didn't like each other all that much, really. I never really could please him. He would have hollered at me for carrying a blade if I had carried one. If I had brought home some B's, he wanted A's. If I got A's, he wanted to make sure they stayed A's. If I was playing football, I should be studying. If I was reading, I should be out playing football. And I should be out playing football. Ugh. He never hollered at Soda Pop. Not even when Soda dropped out of school or got tickets for speeding. He just hollered at me. Soda was glaring at him. Leave my kid brother alone, you hear? It ain't his fault he lets us go to the movies, and it ain't his fault the socials like to jump us, and if he had been carrying a blade, it would have been a good excuse to cut him to ribbons. Soda always takes up for me. Darry said impatiently, well, if I want my kid brother to tell me what to do with my kid brother, I'll tell you. I'll ask you, kid brother. But he laid off me. He always does when Soda Pop tells him to, most of the time. Next time, get one of us to go with you, Ponyboy, Two-Bit said. Any of us will. Speaking of movies, Dally yawned, flipping away his cigarette butt. I'm walking over to the nightly double tomorrow night. Anyone want to come and hunt some action? Steve shook his head. No, me and Soda are picking up Evie and Sandy for the game. He didn't need to look at me the way that he did then. I wasn't going to ask if I could come. I'd never tell Soda because he really liked Steve a lot, but sometimes I can't stand Steve Randall. I mean it. Sometimes I hate him. I will point out, he only spent one paragraph explaining Steve Randall. Still spent over a page explaining Dally, and he's kind of got the same opinion both, it seems. Darry, however, his brother, not the guy with the cold blue eyes and the New York accent. Darry sighed, just like I knew he would. Darry never had time to do anything anymore. I'm working a double tomorrow night. Dally looked at the rest of us. How about y'all? Two-Bit, Johnny Cake, you and Pony Boy want to come? Me and Johnny'll come, I said. I knew Johnny wouldn't open his mouth unless he was forced to. Okay, Darry? Yeah, since it ain't a school night. Darry was real good about letting me go places and on the weekends. On school nights, I could hardly leave the house. I was planning on getting boozed up tomorrow night, Two-Bits said. If I don't, I'll walk over and find y'all. Steve was looking at Dally's hand. His ring, which he had rolled a drunk senior to get, was back on his finger. You break up with Sylvia again? Yeah, and for good this time. That little broad was two-timing me again while I was in jail. I thought of Sylvia and Evie and Sandy and Two-Bit's many blondes. They were the only kind of girls that would look at us, I thought. Tough, loud girls who wore way too much eye makeup and giggled and swore too much. I liked Soda's girl Sandy just fine, though. Her hair was natural blonde and her laugh was soft like her china blue eyes. She didn't have a real good home or anything and was our kind of greaser, but she was a real nice girl. Still, lots of times I wonder what other girls were like. The girls who were bright-eyed and had dresses and a decent length and acted as if they'd like to spit on us if given the chance. Some were afraid of us, and remembering Dallas Winston, I didn't blame them. But most looked at us like we were dirt. Gave us the same kind of look that the Socias did when they came by in their Mustangs and Corvairs and yelled, "Grease!" at us, and I wondered about them. The girls, I mean. Did they cry when their boys were arrested, like Evie did when Steve got hauled in? And did they run out on them the way that Sylvia did Dallas? But maybe their boys didn't get arrested or beaten up or busted up in rodeos. I was still thinking about it while I was doing my homework that night. I had to read the expectations for English, and that kid Pip, he reminded me of us. The way he felt marked lousily because he wasn't a gentleman or anything, and the way that the girl kept looking down on him. That happened to me once. One time in biology, I had to dissect a worm, and the razor wouldn't cut, so I took out my switchblade. The minute I flipped it out, I forgot what I was doing, or I would have never done it. This girl right beside me kind of gasped and said, "They are right, you are a hood." And that didn't make me feel so hot. There were a lot of socias in that class, and I get put into A classes because I'm supposed to be smart, and most of them thought it was pretty funny, but I didn't, though. She was a cute girl. She looked real good in yellow. We deserve a lot of our trouble, I thought. Dallas deserves everything he gets, and should get worse if you want to know the truth. And Two-Bit, he didn't really need half the things he swipes from stores. He just thinks it's fun to swipe everything that isn't nailed down. And I can understand why Soda Pop and Steve get into drag races and fights so much, though. Both of them have too much energy, too much feeling, and there's no way to blow it off. "Oh, rub harder, Soda," I heard Darry mumbling. "You're gonna put me to sleep." I looked through the door, and Soda Pop was giving Darry a back rub. Darry is always pulling muscles. He roofs houses, and he's always trying to carry 2 bundles of roofing up the ladder. I knew Soda would put him to sleep, because Soda has put just about anyone to sleep when he sets his mind to it. He thought Darry worked too hard anyway. I mean, I did too. Darry didn't deserve to work like an old man when he was only 20. He had been a real popular guy in school. He was the captain of the football team, and he had been voted Boy of the Year. But we just didn't have the money for him to go to college, even with the athletic scholarship he won. And now he didn't have time between jobs to even think about college. So he never went anywhere, and never did anything anymore. except to work out at gyms and go skiing with some friends of his sometimes. I rubbed my cheek where it had turned purple. I looked in the mirror, and it did make me look tough, but Derry had made me put a band-aid on the cut. I remembered how awful Johnny had looked when he had gotten beaten up. I had just as much right to use the streets as the Socias did, and Johnny had never hurt them. Why did the Socias hate us so much? We left them alone. I nearly went to sleep over my homework trying to figure it out. Soda Pop, who had jumped into bed by this time, yelled sleepily for me to turn off the light and get to bed. When I finished the chapter, I was on. I did. I will remind you right now that these 3 boys live in a house pretty much by themselves. I mean, he did just say his parents are dead, and they obviously don't have money, so they're going to have to share a bed right now. Soda Pop, who jumped out, already did that. Lying beside Soda, staring at the wall, I kept remembering the faces of the Socias as they surrounded me. The blue Madras shirt the blonde was wearing. And I could hear a thick voice, "Need a haircut, greaser." I shivered. "You cold, Ponyboy?" "A little," I lied. Soda threw one arm across my neck and he mumbled something drowsily. "Listen, kiddo. When Derry hollers at you, he doesn't mean nothing. He just got more worries than someone his age ought to. Don't take him serious. You dig your pony? Don't let him bug you. He's really proud of you. Because you're so brainy. It's just because you're the baby. I mean, he loves you a lot. Savvy?" "Sure," I said, trying for Soda's sake to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. "Soda? Yeah? How come you dropped out?" I never had gotten over that. I could hardly stand it when he left school. "'Cause I'm dumb. The only things I was passing anyway were auto mechanics and gym. You're not dumb." "Yeah, I am. Shut up and I'll tell you something, but don't tell Derry, though." "Okay. I think I'm gonna marry Sandy. After she gets out of school and I get a better job and everything, I might wait till you get out of school, though, so I can still help Derry with the bills and stuff." "Tough enough. Wait till I get out, though, so you can keep Derry off my back." "Don't be like that, kid. I told you. You don't mean half of what he says." "You in love with Sandy? What's it like?" This is real nice." In the moment, his breathing was light and regular. I turned my head to look at him, and in the moonlight, he looked like some Greek god come to earth. I wondered how he could stand being so handsome. Then I sighed. I didn't quite get what he meant about Derry. Derry thought that I was just another mouth to feed and someone to holler at. Derry love me? No, I thought of those hard, pale eyes. Soda was wrong for once, I thought. Anyone or anything except maybe Soda. I didn't hardly think of him as being human. I don't care. I lied to myself. I don't care about him either. Soda's enough, and I'll have him until I get out of school. I don't care about Derry. But I was still lying, and I knew it. I lie to myself all the time. But I never believe me. That was the end of chapter 1. I'm glad I broke this up into 2 parts because it's kind of long. But, yeah. What does it say when a narrator straight up tells you he lies to himself? If he lies to himself and he's telling you a story, can you trust him? Thought about it later.